James Franklin has compiled 4 11-win seasons during his 9 years as head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions, but only has 1 Big Ten title to show for it. Can the boys from Happy Valley make it title number 2 for Football Franklin in 2023?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Remember back in the day when the Big Ten Conference had 10 members? And to describe the tiers in the Big Ten at that point in time, some people refer to it as the Big Two and the Little Eight to describe Michigan and Ohio State's stranglehold at the top of the Big Ten Conference. It's a similar type of narrative right now where Michigan and Ohio State have rolled together a bunch of Big Ten East titles and really Big Ten titles as a whole. No other team since Penn State won the Big Ten title in 2016 has won the Big Ten East other than Michigan and Ohio State. This Penn State Nittany Lions team is primed to buck that trend because this is a team that has the ability, that has the horses. If everything gels together and everything goes right, Penn State can be a Big Ten East title team. They can be a Big Ten Conference Championship team. They could maybe even be a college football playoff team. Now, a big reason why they are in that discussion and they are in that category is because of what they have coming back in the backfield. When you look at these numbers that Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen put up in the backfield last season, they are obviously impressive. But then you put some context behind them, and that context being that they were both true freshmen, and the year before they put up these numbers, they were playing high school football. It makes the numbers pop. It makes the numbers three-dimensional, so to speak, a little bit more. It is crazy what they were able to do immediately when they stepped on campus. Both Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen bring something that Penn State really hasn't had since Saquon Barkley left campus. Then that is some explosiveness in the backfield. No question, they have that with both Singleton and Allen. Now, Nick Singleton specifically is in rare air at Penn State. He joins DJ Dozier's 1983 season and Saquon Barkley's 2015 season as some of the very best true freshman seasons in Penn State history, rushing for 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards, obviously. You look at Penn State legends, Curtis Enos, Kajana Carter, Larry Johnson, some of those guys, they were not able to do that stepping on campus as a true freshman. What Nick Singleton was able to do in rare air when it comes down to the great running backs that have come through State College, Pennsylvania. Now, I look at both of these guys. I don't think each one of these guys is all truly lightning and all truly thunder, like you see those lightning and thunder combinations described sometimes. Singleton is more of a big play, breakaway speed. Allen, the power and the patience. But Allen isn't all power and Singleton isn't all lightning and speed. Allen has some speed. Singleton has some power. If one of these guys go down, you're still going to have a very complete back in the backfield for the Penn State Nittany Lions. You know what's crazy about these two kids? They are true sophomores, which means they still got to come back and play next season before they can declare for the NFL draft. So there's a lot more to be had. There's a lot more yards, touchdowns to be put up by these two guys in the backfield for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, things are going to open up a little bit because I think Penn State is making an upgrade actually at quarterback. And it's crazy to say that because the quarterback that Drew Allar, we'll talk about him in a minute, that Drew Allar is replacing is the Penn State leader in career passing yards and career touchdowns, that being Sean Clifford. Now, when I look at Clifford, he was a very steady option for Sean Clifford. You kind of knew what you were going to get going in. It wasn't much of a roller coaster ride with Clifford. Very steady in his time starting at Penn State. But when you bring in a kid like Drew Allar into this offense, you're going to have an upgrade because Drew has the arm talent of a big-time quarterback. He also has the size of a big-time quarterback. You look at 6'5" and 243 pounds. He appeared sparingly in 2022, 35 of 60 throwing the football, 344 yards and 4 touchdowns. But when he was able to get in the game, he definitely looked the part at quarterback. Here's some things I really like watching some film on Drew Allar. He's patient with the football. When he was in game time last season, patient, ability to slide past the pass rush and not panic. Sometimes you see young kids out of high school, these freshmen, really young players, kind of have the ability, maybe lock in on a receiver or two, or they kind of panic a little bit there in the pocket. Not Drew Allar. He seems very experienced and wise beyond his years from where he is at right now as a quarterback. He delivers the football with a lot of zip, especially on those short passes, your slants, your in routes. I really love the way Drew Allar really zips it in there quickly. He is possibly the most talented quarterback to ever come to Penn State. Like, that's the thing that we need to start talking about, right? You talk about Trace McSorley, you talk about Sean Clifford, you talk about some of the other guys, the Kerry Collins, the Daryl Clarks, some of these other guys that have been at Penn State. You throw in all those guys. Drew Allar, he might not put up the most stats because who knows, he might only be here at Penn State for 2 seasons. So he might not put up those numbers that we just talked about with Sean Clifford. But in terms of talent, arm talent, Drew Allar might be the best of the best when all is said and done here in terms of Penn State quarterback. Now, in order for Allar to really develop as a passer, it's the targets on the outside that are going to have to step up. You'll lose 2 big ones in Parker Washington and Mitchell Tinsley. Parker Washington, 46 catches, 611 yards in 2022. Mitchell Tinsley, the transfer that came in for a year, 51 catches, 577, and he had 5 scores. So 2 big guys that put up some big production on the perimeter that you have to replace. But I think there's a clear number 1 target that Penn State has to replace these guys, and it's Keandre Lambert-Smith. 389 yards, 4 touchdowns last season. You go back to 2021, 521 yards and 3 touchdowns that last season. It was that Rose Bowl performance that really stood out for me for KLS. 3 catches, 188 yards, and that big 88-yard touchdown grab on a picture-perfect throw from Sean Clifford. Now, will he be mentioned among the country's top receivers? Maybe not, but I believe Keandre Lambert-Smith could be poised for a breakout season. He's been in that number 3, maybe number 4 slot for a few seasons, and now that he's the number 1 guy, we're really going to see just how talented Keandre Lambert-Smith is. I think he's really talented, especially at getting over the top on the deep balls. But you want to talk about a kid that's also really good at getting over the top? Let's talk about some transfers. The first one, Dante Cephas, the transfer from Kent State. He had nearly 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns combined the last 2 years for the Golden Flashes. First team All-MAC last season. He is a home run threat. When this team is going to need a big play in 2023, Drew Allar most of the time is probably going to look in the direction of Dante Cephas. He can get over the top as well. Now, when you have an offense that is so good at running the football and a good offensive line, we'll touch on that here in just a minute, that deep ball off of play action is going to be, I think that's going to be a big part of this Penn State offense. Dante Cephas, Keandre Lambert-Smith are going to really see a lot of that action getting deep over the tops of defenses when they kind of creep up in the run game a little bit. Another transfer I think we need to talk about, Malik McLean. In 2 years at Florida State, combined for 33 catches, 396 and 5 touchdowns. So he didn't really eye pop in terms of the numbers, but at 6'4", he creates a matchup problem, especially down by the goal line, going up, getting the ball in high point situations. But he was a 4-star coming out of high school, offers from Florida State, of course. Alabama was on the offer sheet as well. I don't foresee him being the main guy in this Penn State passing game, but I see him being involved in a 3 role, maybe a 4 role, something like that. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Beyond Dante Cephas and beyond Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think 3, 4, those types of roles are definitely up for grabs. Malik McLean will be in the conversation. Harrison Wallace is another guy returning that could be in that conversation for the 3 role as well in this offense. 19 catches, 273 yards, and a score last season. Liam Clifford, Amari Evans, Caden Saunders, who was a 4-star top 100 guy coming out of high school, are also in the conversation as well. Someone's got to step up because beyond Keandre Lambert-Smith and beyond Dante Cephas, who's going to be the guy out of that cluster of receivers to step up? That's the big question, I think, on the outside for Penn State. Now, another big part to this offense is the tight end position, because I think you got two really good receivers on the outside, but I also think you got two solid tight ends as well. You replace Brenton Strange, who had 362 yards and 5 touchdowns for Penn State, but they have a tight end last season that put up similar numbers to Brenton Strange. Let's start first with Theo Johnson at 6'6", 264 pounds. He was on par with what Brenton Strange was doing last season. 328 yards and 4 touchdowns. This is a big target. Both of these tight ends are big guys down near the red zone. Theo Johnson and now Tyler Warren are going to be threats. Tyler Warren, 6'6", 260 pounds, 123 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. I could see a lot of 2 tight end sets. We talked about the run game before, and we're going to talk here in just a minute about this great offensive line. These tight end sets, look at 6'6", both of them over 260 pounds. They add some beef on either side of those offensive tackles, so you could definitely see both of these guys on the field at the same time, both Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson. They have the strength, the size, and the power to contribute to some run-blocking schemes up front of the offensive line. Let's start first with the O-line, because I think this offensive line is as big of a cog in the machine, as big of a part as any in the success, especially of the run game. When you talk about the offensive line, you got to start at left tackle with Olu Fashanu. 6'6", 319 pounds. I'm going to say height and weight for a lot of these offensive linemen because these guys are freaking giants. But with Olu, 2022 second-team All-American, second-team All-Big Ten as well. He started 8 games last year at left tackle. He allowed a whopping 0 sacks in 281 pass blocking attempts. 0! He's one of the best tackles in college football. He just is. When you have a new quarterback coming in and Drew Allar, having a great tackle, especially at left tackle, that's a big key to keeping that quarterback upright. I'm sure Drew Allar loves that stat, 0 sacks in 281 block attempts. The thing that makes him great, I believe, at left tackle is his athleticism, his ability to quickly get out in that first step and get the edge rushers to try to veer them and steer them to the inside instead of having the edge rushers beat them to the outside. His athleticism to get out there quickly, especially in passing situations, really makes Olu Fashanu one of the very best tackles in all of college football. He's a potential first-round pick. He is one of these studs in all of college football at tackle. And we know how important tackles are, especially in this era, especially at NFL football where they're throwing the ball a little bit more right now. Tackles are very important. So he's going to be highly sought after when he becomes NFL available. How about Caden Wallace at the other tackle? 6'5", 341 pounds. Started all 7 games at right tackle last season. I say all 7. I just meant 7 because injuries kind of held him out for a lot of us. I meant to say all 13 games at right tackle. That was in 2021. So 7 games in 2022, 13 games in 2021. So he's been a mainstay on this Penn State offensive line. When you talk about talent and you talk about experience, tackles is where you want that. Drew Allar, this is all music to Drew Allar's ears right now. You look at the interior of the offensive line. Sal Wormley, 6'3", 324-pound senior, all Big Ten honorable mention last year, started all 13 games at right guard last season. We're sensing a pattern. A lot of returning guys, a lot of experience coming back in this Penn State offensive line. Hunter Norzad as well, Big Ten honorable mention, another one of those guys. Started 11 games, guard and center, but he's mainly going to be the center, the captain of that offensive line here this season. Let's look, when we look at depth and maybe the future a little bit for Penn State's O-line, you got to take a look at Alex Burkmeyer and Javon Williams. A couple of years ago is when they brought in a lot of these skill players. You look at Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Caden Saunders was a 4-star wide receiver. Then the next year, now this year's freshman class, they really stacked up on the interior. They stacked up on the offensive line. These guys are two of the very best in this 2023 class on the offensive line in the country, both top 50 players in the country. They may not see a ton of reps this season, but with a good amount of seniors on this offensive line, these guys are the future on the O-line. It's going to just keep on going. It's just going to keep on being a great offensive line at Penn State in the future. But if some of these guys go down, I think Penn State's in pretty good shape with some of these guys on the offensive line that are true freshmen this season. This offense, I believe, has the pieces. The key for me is Drew Allar. If Drew Allar is the quarterback that we think he is, If he can be that 5-star guy and he can live up to the hype, this is an offense that can put up some big-time numbers this season. Let's head over to the defensive side of the ball because that is a unit that has some studs on it as well. Man, with all this talent on defense, there is a guy that Penn State has as their coordinator that I think a lot of other schools would love to have as their coordinators. A lot of other schools would love to have the talent that Penn State has on defense as well. Manny Diaz is the perfect guy for this job. Aggressive, forcing turnovers. Manny Diaz is going to make the most out of these kids this season. No question about that. Now, Penn State has a great secondary this season, even after losing Joey Porter Jr. and Jair Brown. Joey Porter Jr., second-team All-American, one of the best cover corners last season. First-team All-Big Ten, drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, staying in state and playing with the franchise that his dad starred for many, many years. Great fit with another Porter going to play for the black and gold of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, of course, Jair Brown, 10 career interceptions at safety, third-team All-Big Ten last season. So how do you replace that? Well, what you're sensing a pattern here with Penn State is now they are just reloading with some of this talent that James Franklin has been able to bring in recruiting the last couple of years. Kalen King and Johnny Dixon is as good of a corner combination as you're going to find in college football. Kalen King is one of the best. Where Joey Porter Jr. left off, Kalen King is picking up, and he might take it to another level, to be all honest with you. Third-team All-American according to Pro Football Focus. Third-team All-Big Ten. Last season started 9 games, 30 tackles, 3 interceptions, and his 18 pass breakups led the Big Ten and was third in all of college football last season. So don't throw in his direction. It's going to equal most of the time as an incomplete pass or an INT going back the other way. He really showed his ability. When you had opt-outs with Joey Porter Jr. in the secondary, he really showed his ability to lock down in the Rose Bowl against Utah. That Rose Bowl game against Utah, you really saw a lot of guys step up when some of these other players stepped out to prepare for the NFL draft. Kalen King was one of those guys. Johnny Dixon on the other side. Honorable mention, all Big Ten in 2022, 6 starts, 23 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, 10 pass breakups, stuff in the stat sheet. And what I love about Johnny Dixon's game is his ability to get in there with the guys in the front 7. Rush the passer. This is one of the best guys in the Big Ten, maybe in all of college football, from the secondary in blitzing situations in getting to the quarterback. I mentioned his 3 sacks and 4.5 tackles for loss. He loves to live in the backfield, even at that corner spot as well. But he's great in run support as well. He's really a little bit of a dual threat there at the cornerback position with Johnny Dixon. Now, you have Jalen Reed and Keaton Ellis will have to step up at safety. Ellis started all 13 games besides Jair Brown last season at safety, 24 tackles, 2 TFLs, 7 pass breakups. And then you look at Jalen Reed, a guy that's looking to step in and fill the shoes of Jair Brown. 31 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 3 pass breakups last season. Now, after Daquan Hardy at nickel, there's a lot of sophomores and a lot of freshmen. So although the secondary is really good in their starting role, where's the depth going to be? If you get an injury, and of course you bring in maybe some dime packages, passing situations where you bring in those extra defensive backs, where is Penn State going to be with a lot of youth, freshmen, and sophomores back there in that secondary? All right, let's move on to the linebackers. The linebackers are really good as well. When you wear number 11 at Penn State, there are high expectations, and Abdul Carter is living up to all those expectations. Last year, all Big Ten second team as a freshman, true freshman All-American, 56 tackles, 10.5 TFLs, 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles for the big linebacker in the middle. He led the team in sacks, second in TFL. So right away, as a true freshman, there were expectations on him, and he was living up to that expectations. He has big size, and I think his combination of size, athleticism, and speed makes him a big-time problem for opposing offensive lines up there. Curtis Jacobs in this linebacking core as well. 52 tackles, 7.5 TFLs, and 4 sacks. All Big Ten honorable mention last season. He started a lot of games the last 2 seasons. He's got a lot of experience. Steady performer. out there with Curtis Jacobs. You know what you're going to get. He's always going to be on assignment. Very rarely does Curtis Jacobs get his eyes caught where they shouldn't be on the defensive side of the ball at linebacker. You're going to look at Tyler Elsdon and Kobe King to battle it out for the middle linebacker spot, but they're both going to be in the rotation. I assume that they're both going to get a lot of time in there. So I feel very good about this linebacking core, led, of course, by Abdul Carter. Now, despite losing P.J. Mustipher on the defensive line, second team All Big Ten each of the last 2 seasons, this is still a defensive line that's going to cause a lot of problems for other Big Ten offenses. Chop Robinson may be one of the very best pass rushers in all of college football. 10 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks last season. All Big Ten honorable mention. He was 7th in the Big Ten in sacks, but man, you pair him with Adisa Isaac on the other side, and this may be the top defensive end, or one of the top. You look at Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph at Illinois. This defensive end tandem is right up there as one of the very best in the conference. 11 TFLs for Isaac last season, 4 sacks, third team All Big Ten, started all 13 games of defensive line, third in the Big Ten among defensive linemen in tackles for loss. Both of these guys coming off the edge, I think, are going to have a better season. I think they're really going to explode this season because you can't shade your protection to one side. You got to account for both guys coming off each side. What about Danny Dennis Sutton? Very highly recruited kid. Penn State fans are very excited about this kid. Top 50 player in the country when he came out. He's a true sophomore this season. 3.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and ESPN.com, true freshman All-American. Now, because of those studs that I just mentioned at defensive end, it's to be determined how much time he exactly is going to get. I don't know if he's going to get into a starting role or where exactly he's going to fit in, but I would love to see him in pass rush situations. I think this kid's got a lot of talent, and when a lot of these players move on after this season, right, these upperclassmen, these juniors, these guys on this defensive line, Danny Dennis Sutton is going to be that next guy. It's just this year I just don't know how much reps he's going to get, but he's definitely going to be a big threat. Another threat. They've got 3 big threats in the pass rush game. Defensive tackles, Devon Ellis and Akeem Bayman as well, round out a very strong front. Bayman started 12 games. Ellis trying to fill in for P.J. Mustipher as well on that defensive line. I don't know which one's better, defense or offense. These are both really good units at Penn State, folks. I am extremely excited for the Nittany Lions. This is a team that can compete for titles, division, conference, maybe national in this 2023 campaign at Penn State. Let's talk about the schedule right now because you got to navigate your way through it if you're going to find yourself in a Big Ten championship position or maybe a college football playoff position. After those first 2 games, it should be a pretty easy start against West Virginia and Delaware for the Nittany Lions for Drew Allar. Get him kind of get him used to things, kind of get him acclimated a little bit. Drew Allar's first big test. You got to go on the road, big noon on Fox against one of the very best fronts in the Big Ten and maybe one of the best defensive lines in all of college football. I am so pumped to see that offensive line matchup between Penn State against those great defensive linemen that they have at Illinois, Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph as well. Boy, that is going to be a fun matchup. Let's just keep a camera. Can we get a live stream of Johnny Newton against Olu Fashanu? That is going to be a hell of a matchup all afternoon long. One of the best tackles, one of the best defensive linemen in all of college football. So you got to play at Illinois. That's going to be a tough go in the first one on the road for Drew Allar, his first big test. You got to play Iowa. That's another great defense, back-to-back Illinois and Iowa. Of course, you got the whiteout helping you out against the Iowa Hawkeyes. But if Penn State's able to get through those 2 games, the schedule is fairly favorable for them kind of going down the road. They've got Michigan at home late in the season. That's, I believe, going to be a big noon game. Although it's not a whiteout, this is still going to be a rocking atmosphere in Happy Valley. I think they match up well with Ohio State. Michigan is Michigan. They're fantastic right now. It's going to be, well, let's wait and see when we start talking about Penn State and maybe beating Michigan at home late in the season. But they've got them in a very good place. Penn State does right there, especially late in the season. If you are a Penn State fan, you should be excited. If you are a Penn State fan, you should have expectations. It's getting over the hump. Can they beat Ohio State? Can they beat Michigan? Of course, you got to go back to 2016, that blocked field goal game when they were able to beat Penn State, when they were able to win the Big Ten championship. Is this team good enough to get past the big two that have been in the Big Ten East? That's a big question for the Nittany Lions. What I can say, I love this team, and y'all should have an eye on Penn State making some big-time noise this season.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.